The nature of monkey was irrepressible.
The Censorship Muppets are at it again. And it's the same, usual suspects. Daniel Fox, who is behind Zweihander, the guy behind Swordsfall, whose name forever escapes me. Is it Brandon, Bradley, something like that? I don't know, who cares? Swords fail, them. But this time they've gone after a reviewer. Not even someone who makes games, just someone who reviews games. RPG Resource on Twitter, Megan Robertson. She's one of the very few featured reviewers who actually does their job and reviews games, and reviews them as games rather than as political pamphlets or whatever else. So well done, DrivethRu. You've removed one of the very few featured reviewers who actually did their job, took it seriously, and did a good job. Now, it was a legacy feature, they might be getting rid of it anyway, they say they're reviewing the whole thing, but of course this is never enough, is it? No matter who they censor, whose hobby they ruin, whose lives they fuck up, they're always looking for something else, something more. And so they're using this as a springboard. They sense that DrivethRu has given another inch and they're trying to take another mile, demanding that Pundit be booted off the platform, that certain of my products get taken down, and gone after other people as well. Yeah, this is the same crew that got Satine to disown me over nothing, right? By misrepresenting me to her as a bigot and a racist and whatever else. These are the same people that have gone after plenty of others, shameless self-promoters, particularly in the case of Fox and Swordsfail. And they've got this whole band of hangers-on that in any other context would be called a dogpiling mob, right? Flooding people with hate messages and so on. The very tactics they say are bad when other people do them, which I would say they are, but there's a difference between dogpiling and what they call dogpiling. Still, here we are. Someone being booted off a site and their position as a featured reviewer, which they've held for years. One person, really, who was doing a good job there, and it's gone because of one heated exchange on Twitter, not even on DrivethRu as a platform. It's not a good precedent, is it? And it's happening more and more, people being punished on a platform for things they've done off a platform. It's not a good precedent, especially given how spotty moderation is, how people get misrepresented, how I've been misrepresented. Now, she did say some things which I definitely do not agree with at all, but I think she has a right to those views and she has a right to express them, and she has a right to a life and a hobby beyond that, so far as I'm concerned. Should be, so far as anyone else is concerned. DrivethRu was founded on a principle of free speech and opening up publication to all sorts of people. Now look where we are. And with it potentially getting worse and people pushing for more and more, and it will never be enough. It's inevitable that it turns into a purity spiral and they turn on each other. Swordsfail. I did a diss rap at them the other day. Why? Because someone who was really their ally and was backing them up and saying the most abusive and horrible things about me fell afoul of them because they didn't like rap music. And if you don't like rap music, that makes you a racist. At least according to Swordsfail. Yeah, these are the people we're dealing with. They're not honest. They misrepresent. They get off on ruining other people's lives and hobbies. And for what? See, when you are actually an activist, right, it is your job to educate people. It's your job to persuade. It's your job to argue, right? That is the job. Where this idea of it's not my job to educate you, or educate yourself shitlord, or I'm not going to enact the emotional labour, blah 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 blah, where that comes from I don't know, but that's not activism. That is the sure sign that what you're engaged in is not activism but virtue signalling. Hey, look at me, I'm holding this person to account. That's not how you make a difference. Now, I don't agree with what she said, but do you think she's going to listen to me, someone who will actually talk and debate with her on a reasonable level, or is she going to listen to the people that try to expunge her from a hobby that clearly means a huge amount to her? Or is she going to dig her heels in against you? What was the cause of the argument? Well, and God, it exhausts me just to articulate this, some people think that fantasy races are racist, and that prejudice against fantasy races is racist. Now, I could go on, and I could talk about Tolkien, and I could talk about C.S. Lewis, and I could talk about Robert E. Howard, and how you can take them as racist, and how you can take them as not racist, and whether you should pay attention to who the author is, or just the quality of the work, and doubtless H.P. Lovecraft would come up at some point. It's pointless, right? Games aren't the same thing. You can customize them. These creatures aren't really races, they're other species, certainly in some games. Orcs in Warhammer are mushroom people, right? And you can kit bash and you can change anything. Orcs being horrendous, savage, cannibalistic rape monsters, right, doesn't say anything about black people, and I don't know why you would think that it would, except that you're horribly racist, right? Humans takes in all humans. Orcs are orcs, elves are elves, halflings are halflings, dwarves are dwarves, and so on. Right? These are really other species. And it's absurd and ridiculous to pretend that this has anything to do with racial essentialism in the real world. It has nothing to do with it whatsoever. And you're an idiot if you think otherwise. Particularly now. I think you could maybe make an argument about Howard, but otherwise, I don't think so. And your game is your own. You can customize it, you can change it, you can write your own, whatever else. Yeah, if you're that hung up over it, you've got solutions. Most people don't see that when they look at the games, because it isn't there. Now, Megan did say some things which I violently disagree with, which at least hit the boundary of racial essentialism, I think. But like I said, who's she going to listen to? Who's anyone going to listen to? I have a deeply contrarian spirit in myself, which I often see in others. Someone tells me I can't do something, I want to do it twice as hard. So you tell me that you think monstrous races are somehow something to do with real races in the world, and I'm immediately thinking, oh well, I could do a setting where the new world is populated by a different hominid species that is genuinely more violent and horrible and nasty and irredeemably so, and then you play colonists in the new world with sort of 1600s technology trying to take them on. Yeah, they're physically superior, you're technologically superior, and they're not immune to the diseases that you have. So basically taking the worst, most cartoonish idea that colonialists, imperialists had, and making it real within a game world and seeing how that would play out in terms of morality and ethics and things, because that's what interests me. I won't do it, of course. Nobody would understand the nuance. Nobody would get what I was going for, even if I spelt it out, and they would ignore me, even if I spelt it out, so I won't do it, but I'm tempted, right? Because you're such dicks. If you wanted to convince her, yeah, there are ways to do so. The information is on your side in this instance. Race means virtually nothing. America gets this confused because they've had this racial animus to their politics for such a long time, but it's really the politics of class and wealth. It's just the two happen to intersect quite a lot. So what you think of as racial prejudices tend to actually be prejudices against the poor. And they're the same ones that we've seen against bodies of immigrants all throughout history, or the poor all throughout history. Shiftless, criminal, inherently criminal somehow. People used to say that about the Irish and the Italians and whatever else. It's wealth, it's class, that's what it is. If you control for wealth and class and you look at the arrest statistics and the sentencing and all the rest of it, you'll find that the racial divide virtually disappears, or at least a huge chunk of it does, depending which country and which state you're in. Some places do genuinely have some issues with racism, but it's still intermingled with that class and wealth issue. People who are poorer get into crime more. People who are poorer get into gangs, are more likely to use drugs or drink or whatever to cope, and that leads to antisocial behaviour. It's poverty, it's not race, and you can prove that statistically. But then you got one half who wants to blame everything on race, and the other half that wants to blame everything on racism, and so you don't get anywhere. It's a shame. But should she be censored? No. People should be allowed to have viewpoints. People should be allowed to have obnoxious viewpoints. People should be allowed to express obnoxious viewpoints. And if it's not happening in her reviews on DriveThru, who gives a fuck? Sort it out. And stop giving in to these people. They're bad actors. It's obvious. It's open and obvious that they are not operating in good faith. Stop listening to them. Zang.
I can get you anything you want. You just have to talk to me, talk to me. I'm your priest, I'm your shrink, I'm your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man, the Santa Claus of the subconscious. You say it, you even think it, you can have it.